I have started.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Pooja, for basically starting the recording. So we will proceed ahead with our demo for today. Okay. Yeah. Uh, uh, Good morning to everybody, guys, and welcome to our Ariba demo session. Now, before we begin with our Ariba demo session, uh, let's try to understand what is our goal and what we are basically trying to accomplish in this training. We have been doing this training for last 5 years. We started our training in Ariba from 2017. Okay, and we have trained more than 3,000 plus participants. Now, what is our goal? So, uh, I've been working in Ariba for the last 9 years almost, right? So, whenever I used to work in the project, right, and I used to see that uh, Ariba consultants are working, so I always used to see that they are struggling. Even I have also struggled to a certain point. So I try to understand what was the issue or why the struggling happens. Now, the struggling happens because of our assumption, of our thinking. Like, okay, Ariba is just like any SAP product. Of our thinking, like whatever the process we are able to see in and in SRM, same thing will happen in Ariba. Of our thinking that whatever way we have configured SRM and or S/4HANA sourcing and procurement, same thing we will do it in Ariba. Because of these reasons, what happens is like we are going and implementing Ariba. Very good. But what is happening? We are delivering from perspective, SRM perspective. So that is the reason. So then we understood that we have to change our mindset. We have to change how we are doing the project. Then only what will happen? These struggles will end and we can do this work in the project very effortlessly. So with this motto, we started this training. We are not going to do any standard training at all. Standard training means what? Theoretical things. You will see that in every session, starting from today till the last session, all of you guys will basically see that we are focusing on what? We are focusing on scenarios. We are focusing on the things which you will face in front of the client, not standard Ariba. Why? Because anybody can have a look at the SAP Press Ariba book, run through the SAP standard configuration guidebooks, read it, and explain it. Because that is the standard SAP Ariba practices. But the thing is, like when you go to a project, what you are doing? You are replacing the standard SAP Ariba practices with that of the client's business process. So that means it's not the knowledge. What I see is like majority of Ariba consultant, what they're coming is like they're having good knowledge on Ariba standard process. But when client will give, okay, this is my requirement, this mapping of the client requirement into Ariba's process, that is where the struggle part is there. Even I also struggled for the first 2.5 years of my career in Ariba. Excuse me. So this is our goal. Our goal is basically to gather knowledge so that this knowledge help us in working in the project. So this is not a training session. This is a knowledge sharing session, guys. Okay. So our methodology, the way how we basically deliver this training is very, very different. Okay. Now keep this thing in your mind. Now, very good. Let us start our demo rather than wasting time. Okay. Now, and you will notice there is no PPT, and there won't be any PPT. Why? Because as I said, we are not here to learn standard Ariba. We are not here to learn standard Ariba. We are going to understand what we do in the project, because in the project, please remember one thing: your knowledge won't be tested. People generally say to me that Manoj, our Ariba knowledge will be tested in the project, and I will say no. What gets tested? The application of your knowledge, and that is what we are going to see. Okay, what is SAP Ariba? Whenever this term comes to your point over here, uh, I hear multiple line definition. It's a procurement software through which we can do strategic procurement as well as operational procurement or our day-to-day procurement. Boss, instead of answering, you are creating much more question in the mind. So how will you basically define Ariba in a very simplified manner so that everybody can understand? So how? So let us try to understand that. What is Ariba? A procurement focused software. We will not say application, but we'll say software. Now, please focus on this thing. Procurement focused software, not an ERP. Acha. Yes. So that is why I was telling to all of you guys that when you're comparing S4 HANA sourcing and procurement with that of Ariba, actually and sourcing and procurement, they are not a software. They are a module within a ERP. Okay. Exactly. So, excuse me. So keep this thing in your mind. It's a very, very important thing that this is not a part of your ERP. It's just a procurement focused software. So generally what happens is like majority of the guys, what they will think that what we can do it in we can do it in Ariba. Then I will say, boss, yes, but there are certain functionalities which you think happens in but actually happens in other modules of ERP that you cannot accommodate in Ariba because Ariba is not an ERP. Okay. Now, procurement focused software based on cloud services. Now, I think majority of you guys understand what's the difference between a cloud and an on-premise. On-premise means like your uh, client is implementing or installing the software where in their own application server. That is on-premise. Okay, Manoj. What about Ariba? Ariba cannot be installed within the client's application server. Ariba has its own application server within which Ariba is installed. So that is why it's a cloud solution. So that means what will happen? Client don't have to buy a application server to install Ariba within it. Okay, that means what? That means he will see whenever you are going up against a Ariba job opportunities, he will see they are functional consultant job only. It's a functional consultant job. It's not a technical consultant job. Why? Because there is no technical. Huh. Before 2010, Ariba used to have on-premise solution. So for that, you have a technical consultant. But after 2010, excuse me, Ariba was launched as a cloud solution. So since it was launched as a cloud solution, there is no technical roles. Now we will understand in our session 1 that whenever there is some source code changes, what will happen is like we will, we can't do anything, but we will give the logic to whom? To the Ariba engineering team. Ariba engineering team have access to the source code and they can change the source code. So that will be the part of enhancement request. Excuse me. Excuse me. Yeah. This is the meaning of SAP Ariba. Very good. Now, what are the solution? This is sometimes they are basically also called as, you know, strategic sourcing plus procurement module. Downstream is basically called as buying and invoicing module or solution. Okay. Old wine, new bottle. Nothing else. Okay. Very good. Now, whenever I ask any Ariba functional consultant that what's the meaning of upstream solution, what's the meaning of downstream solution, why we have upstream solution, why there is downstream solution, what's the reason behind it? What happens is confusion, majorly confusion. So let us try to understand. Uh, Before I go into upstream and downstream, whenever you do procurement, irrespective of which product you are having, you will have two solutions, or you will have two major procurement process. That is new products. That means the products which you have never bought before, and the old products. Old product means what? Which you have already bought. So the major distinguishing feature is if you haven't bought a product, that means source of supply will be unknown. That means from which supplier you are buying, at what price you are buying, you will not know. That is the source of supply. But on the other hand, old product means the products which you have already bought. What will happen? Source of supply will be known. Now, how will you excuse me? So, how will you do the procurement then? Now, this old product or new product is basically called as non-catalog items in Ariba. Yes, there is nothing called as new product and old products in Ariba. Actually, these are basically called as catalog items and non-catalog items. Okay. So please remember, non-catalog item means new product which you have never bought before. Catalog items are basically what? Items which you have already bought. Now, what happens is, you will understand shortly, a little bit later, that catalog items are loaded as catalog subscription in downstream. In downstream, we will basically load this data. That's it. Nothing else. That's it. Okay. So, very good. What about non-catalog item? So, non-catalog item you cannot load. Why? Because it's a new data, a new product which you've never bought before. So, how will you basically save this data? You can't. Now, that means all of you will say to me, Manoj, that for non-catalog item, I have to devise one process. For catalog item, I have to devise one process. Yes, very good. Now, what is the process definition? Finding and finalizing the base source of supply for non-catalog items. Okay, this is upstream. Okay, what is downstream? Okay, so what does it actually mean? It means if you look at upstream, in upstream, basically what we are saying, boss, non-catalog item only. Source of supply will be unknown. So in that case, what we will do in upstream, we will find and finalize the best source of supply for the non-catalog items. Okay, what we will do in the downstream? In downstream, we will be working with catalog items only. So catalog item means what? Source of supply will be known. So source of supply is known means what? We will directly order the product from the supplier, and then the supplier will give us the deliveries. We will take the deliveries and we will pay the supplier. For catalog item, why? Because for them source of supply is known. So this is what we do in upstream as well as in downstream. And this simple thing, what happens is, like, whenever we ask, majority of the Ariba consultant are not able to understand why. Because as I said to all of you guys before, that they are trying to do a definition or understand about a definition, nothing else. But it's not a definition. Why? Because when you go to a project, there you are having a clear understanding कि the segregation of upstream and downstream, it is happening in this way. Okay, very good. Now, before I go directly into upstream solutions and downstream solutions, you need to understand certain things. And what is that certain things first? That is, upstream solution has a separate database. Downstream solution also have a separate database. Very, very important. Now, what all of you will say, Manoj, what do you mean by this thing? That upstream solution has a separate database, downstream solution has a separate database. Because when we look at SAP, separate database is a very unique concept in Ariba. Why is that? Because if you look at ECC, you look at S4 HANA, you look at SRM, all of this product is having a single database. So as a functional consultant, you were not constrained. It does not matter, boss. But when you come to Ariba, you see that the upstream solution is present in one database, downstream solution is present in one database. Does it create issue? And I will say yes, it does create issue. What's the first issue? So when I say that in upstream we are working with non-catalog item and in downstream we are working with catalog items, so please remember, excuse me, that you are loading catalog items where? In downstream. So that means it is available in downstream database. Please don't expect catalog items to be available within the upstream database. Acha. So Manoj, it means that in upstream database or in upstream solution, we will never have catalog items. Yes. One of the most important breakthrough which you can understand over here is what? That this is two different databases. Majority of the Ariba functional consultant thinks that catalog items are available not only in downstream but also in upstream. And that's a very wrong assumption. Okay. So please keep this thing in your mind. Now, okay. Very good. You will see majority of the other transactional documents which are coming over here, they are also having issues. Why? Why is that so? Because of one thing. And what is that one thing? Because of separate databases. Okay. Now let us go into upstream solution. Now first and foremost thing, when you will go into the upstream, we will begin with sourcing. What is the meaning of sourcing? So sourcing solution actually means, in a very simple way, what is it? find the best source of supply. Find the best source of supply. That is basically nothing but upstream solutions. Done. Now, within that, you have RFI and you will have RFP majorly. Request for info and request for proposal. Now, what we will do in RFI and RFP over here? What's the major thing which we will do over here? The answer is simple. In request for info, we will basically begin with, or we will ask the supplier to give a technical quotation. And here in RFP, we will ask the supplier for price quotation. Now, what happens is whenever any Ariba functional consultant goes into a project and they basically, what you can say, do the implementation, client generally asks them this question that what we will implement first, RFI or RFP. That means when we are beginning a sourcing project process, where we will start from the RFI or RFI then RFP, which one? Now, majority of you guys will basically think on this part also that okay, in MM, majority of the time we will start with RFI. We will ask the technical quotation, then the technical fit supplier will be called for price quotation. Then you will also remember, no, it will not happen always like this. Only for new product, what we will do, since we don't know about the product, we will ask for technical quotation. Once everything is okay, then I will ask for price quotation. Exactly. But on the other hand, if I look at a normal process, what is that normal process? The normal process is, if it is a catalog item, then that means it's a old product. We know who is the supplier, what is the technical things and all those things. We will go ahead with RFP. So you will say, Manoj, RFI means we will work with non-catalog items, and RFP means catalog items, right? Now, what do you think, guys? What I have said over here is correct? For RFI and RFP, whatever I have said is correct or wrong? What do you think? See, technical quotation for RFI, price quotation for RFP is correct, but for non-catalog item we will do RFI. For catalog item we will do RFP. Is this generation correct? Wrong. Actually, it is wrong. Why? See, this is why. This is why I said that catalog items over here are only part of downstream. It can never be part of upstream. Sourcing is part of which solution? Excuse me. Upstream solution only. That is why. Okay. So this is wrong. Now all of you will then say to me that Manoj, there are only non-catalog items. Okay. Now it becomes much more tough for all of you guys. Ki, Are Manoj, you look at RFI and RFP over there, both of them are non-catalog items. Both of them are non-catalog item. Now, how I will differentiate between whether it's a RFI or RFP process? That we will understand in our session 1. Because this is the starting point for our discussion in sourcing. Because this kind of question your client will ask, how will you basically give a solution? Not from not from SRM. You have to understand over here. Then only you can give this definition that okay, for this scenario within non-catalog item we will follow RFI. For this for the other scenario within non-catalog item we will follow RFP. Okay, so now as we said, sourcing means the finding the best source of supply. So what will happen? This sourcing project we will send it to whom? We will send it to the supplier. Supplier will basically submit the response. Once they submit the response, what will happen? Once they submit the response, then we will award. Okay, this supplier has won the sourcing project. That means what? We have found out the best source of supply. But it is not enough. Why? Because the next step is contracting. Why? Because whatever you have agreed with the supplier, right? The supplier also must say, okay, Manoj, everything is okay with me. Yeah. Why? For that, you have to sign a legal agreement. You have to sign a legal agreement between buyer and supplier. Okay? Very simple thing. Don't think about, hey, what I will do or where I will do it. It's simple. Legal agreement between buyer and supplier. That is nothing but contracting. Now, what happens in a contracting? In Ariba contracting, we will basically work with contract authoring. You will see that we are basically working with documents only over here. That you have to be very, very clear about it. That in Ariba contracts, you are working with documents only. Now, all of you will say to me, which document, Manoj? Then I will basically say Word, Excel. Okay. So that part is basically called as contract authoring. Now, once you have worked with the documents, uploaded the document, changed the document, published the document, then you will basically work on contract task and you will complete the task over here. Once you complete the task, then your contract will be published. Now, all of you will say, very good, Manoj. But there is a catch. And what is that catch? What happens is like majority of the functional consultant, they will not focus on this thing. And what is this focusing which we wanted to do? The focusing which we wanted to do over here is DFS versus ECA. Now, all of you will say, what is this DFS and ECA? Manoj? Is there any meaning out of it? Then I will say yes. DFS actually stands for desktop file sync. ECA stands for enhanced contract authoring. So what's the issue? That is, before 2016, what happened? Ariba was using DFS, desktop file syncing. Now, working with these documents and changing the documents and editing the documents and everything was very, very tough. Exactly. Now, what's the issue with the DFS? So DFS was basically based out of a ActiveX technology. Now you know ActiveX technology is only supported by Internet Explorer. So till 2016 December, I think, yeah, majority of the clients of Ariba contract management, they used to have Internet Explorer, and working with the documents, uploading the documents, updating the document was very, very tough. So what happened was, like, majority of the excuse me, customers who were implementing Ariba, they were saying, I will not implement contract. Boss, I will not implement contract. What you can do? Plain as simple. Now, Ariba understood that they are losing out money. So then they basically designed another solution. And what was that solution? Enhanced contract authoring. Now, this is supported by Java. Java is supported by all the browsers. Now, all of you will say, which browser, Manoj? Opera, Firefox, Chrome, Edge, Safari. Within Mac OS, you will only get Safari only. That is also supported. So then what happened was, like, majority of the clients started using ECA. And please remember, with Ariba, you will be mostly working with European or US client. And since you will be working with European and US clients majorly, okay, you will see what is their, logic, or what is their uh, 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 focus is that I will not use Internet Explorer. If you are working with a South Asian client, like from India, they will basically agree. Okay, 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 boss, I will use Internet Explorer. But the European and US clients, they will never agree. Why? Because they will say, first of all, I am using Mac OS, so there is no other option apart from Safari. Okay. Few of the clients will say, I am using Windows, but due to security issue, I will use only Chrome or Firefox only. Okay. Yes, now we understood. Now what you will do? With those clients, DFS did not stand a chance, but ECA was there. Now all of you will say, okay, Manoj, you told us about the ECA process. Very, very good. I'm very, very happy. But a small thing I want to focus, and I will say, okay, what? What does it has to do with our session? Then I will say, right now, if you go to the project, you will only find ECA contract. Now, if you don't understand the DFS versus ECA, what will happen? Your process flow is different. Similarly, your template configuration is also different. Acha, so Manoj, that means basically if I see the DFS process and the DFS template configuration, when I will go to ECA, what will happen? All the hell will break loose. And I will say, Exactly. You are seeing one thing in a project, and when you're going to the project, you are seeing everything is different. That is why I wanted to make sure that all of you guys understand that in our session, whether it's a process flow session or a configuration session, we are going to only understand ECA, not DFS. Okay. Now the third point, all of you will say, okay, very good, Manoj, what is that? Now guys, just give me a moment. I think somebody has come to our home. Just give me a moment. Yeah, sorry guys. Yeah, yeah, somehow a neighbor came to our home over there, so I was basically just talking with them. Okay, so let us understand supplier onboarding. So what do you mean by supplier onboarding? All of you will basically ask me, "Arey Manoj, what is the meaning of supplier onboarding?" So it's a very simple thing. So it means basically very simple that supplier onboarding is there. And what is the meaning of supplier onboarding? So supplier onboarding means how you are going to basically load the supplier into Ariba. Now the thing is like, if you go to any theoretical trainer, they will say upstream start with supplier onboarding. They will say upstream start with supplier onboarding. Why? Because immediately they will say we are going to SAP standard process. What SAP standard process is saying? Boss, onboard new supplier. Very good. Onboard new supplier. So everybody of you will say, okay, yes, Manoj. Then basically call those suppliers for sourcing. Okay, supplier will give the what? Quotation. Done. You will award them, and then you will sign the contract. Very good. This is the process which Ariba says as standard. Now all of you guys knows about this thing. This is wrong. Why? Because when you will go to implementation project, do you think your client will say, "Arey Manoj, find me some 2000 supplier, 2000 new supplier"? All of you will say no. Then I will say, okay. So the client will load the supplier from where? From their ERP. Client will say, "Arey, I am having all my suppliers." Where? In ERP itself. From ERP, I will basically copy them. Where? Into Ariba. Why I will try to find a 2000, 3000, 5000 new supplier? I am already having a supplier in my ERP. You onboard them into Ariba. So that means the solution which Ariba is saying this is a standard process that all of you guys know is wrong. So what happens? So all of you will say, Acha Manoj, I think this is majorly a part of integration, specifically master data integration. Why? Because we are replicating the supply from our ERP to Ariba. Exactly, it makes sense, and I will say exactly correct. So that is the meaning of supplier onboarding. That is why I said that supplier onboarding is basically part of master data integration. Why I will begin my upstream process with them. Okay, so that is why I have kept it as the last point in upstream. Now, even though you will say this is a part of master data integration, it will be a little bit complex process. Why? You will see in Ariba user interface, you are having two user interface. The first one is Ariba buyer. What is the second one? Second one is Ariba network. Now all of you will say, what is this Ariba network? Ariba buyer is basically used by buyers only. So it's not like an enterprise portal where you will define कि अरे boss both buyer and supplier will be able to log in. Now what happens over there? Now all of you will basically say to me that if you look at the Ariba buyer over here, here what you can say, the buyers are logging in. Enterprise portal, if you look at it, they are both buyer and supplier are logging in. So how the segregation is happening with the help of role. Now Ariba basically say that if you give a wrong role, then what will happen? The supplier will basically get access to the buyers in production system and they can check everything. Huge security risk. So Ariba did not wanted to go with this issue or go with this problem. Okay, so what they went with or how they went with, Manoj? So they went with two user interface over here. And what is that? Ariba buyer, which is used by buyer, and Ariba network, which will be used by suppliers. Okay, so please keep this thing in your mind. So this is basically nothing but suppliers. Now, supplier request process. So when you look at this process, you will see here we are capturing some basic data about the supplier and we are creating their profile where we are creating the profile in Ariba buyer. Exactly. So please keep this thing in your mind that we are basically capturing their data and we are putting their data in Ariba buyer. But can we use the supplier now? The answer is no. Now why we can't use the supplier? Because we have just created their profile in Ariba buyer. Now we have to ask the supplier ki boss go to Ariba network and create your credentials. So that is the next process. That is basically supplier registration. Then supplier registration, what we will do? We will basically say to the supplier, ki boss, go to Ariba network, create your credentials. Once they create their credentials, what will happen? Then their credentials can be used. Okay, very good, Manoj. So now what all of you will say? I can use this supplier in sourcing and contracting. Very good. Very good. What you do in downstream? PO, GR, invoice reconciliation, payment, all those things. We will do it. Now, do you think we don't need a supplier in PO? What are your views? Why? Because remember one thing, supplier onboarding is part of the upstream solution. Upstream solution is having their own upstream database. So when I say supply registration is completed, supply is available, it is available for upstream only, not downstream. Now what will happen? Now this is where majority of the Ariba consultant will say it does not matter. It does matter. Okay, what is it? Where it matters, Manoj? The matter is key this supply is copied from ERP. Now, if this supplier exists in ERP, can I include that supplier in sourcing and contracting? All of you will say yes. Can I include this supplier in a PO? All of you will say yes. Then immediately I will say, hold on. So you can use this supplier in sourcing and contracting as well as in PO in ERP. Why? Because there is only one database. Now, sourcing and contracting, when it will be integrated with Ariba, what will happen? It will work properly. But against this supplier, you have created a PO in ERP. Now you want this PO to be replicated back into Ariba. What will happen? It will get replicated in Ariba downstream, not in Ariba upstream. And when it will get replicated into Ariba downstream, Ariba will say Ariba's downstream is a separate database. So this supplier does not exist in downstream. So what will happen? PO replication failed. Now what will happen? This Ariba consultant will come and say to me, "Are Manoj, Ariba integration is not working. Ariba integration is faltu. It does not have any or does not make any sense." Exactly. Now, what's or how we will basically resolve this thing? How we will basically resolve this thing? So the answer is pretty simple. That we need the supplier to be copied into a what? Downstream as well. So how we will do it? Now you understand that why I said to all of you guys there is a separate database, and you will understand in today's session only what are the impact of it. Generally what happens is like when I will ask any Ariba consultant ki, "Are boss, why we are doing supplier qualification?" And they will give me a look and they will say, "Just to qualify a supplier." Acha, just to qualify a supplier? What about um, uh, What about replicating the supplier from upstream to downstream database? Yes, it is required. Otherwise, this PO will fail considerably. So that is why we do the supplier qualification. Supplier qualification is nothing but moving of data of the supply data from upstream to downstream, so that when we will do the integration between ERP and downstream, it will work without any issue. That is why supplier qualification is mandatory. That is why if you see part of master data integration, three of this step is mandatory. You just cannot say one. And remember, you cannot do it one by one. You have to do this three step for 5,000 supplier, 10,000 supplier, 20,000 supplier, 30,000 supplier which are existing in ERP. Exactly. See, this was the, you know, practical things which we wanted to discuss in our session. Today is a demo session, but still we are discussing on those things only. We are not talking about standard Ariba. Anybody can talk about standard Ariba, guys. You ask them this question, why supplier qualification is required? Can we do without supplier qualification? They will say, yes, boss. Without supplier qualification, you can work without any issue. Acha, why? Or what's the reason behind it? Nobody is able to say, but this is the reason behind it. Okay. Now, I know uh, we always take some strategically placed break, guys, during our session, so that none of you guys, find this thing to be a what to be basically a lecture kind of thing. So we will do what? We will take a 10 minutes break. Okay, you don't need to basically log off from this meeting. Why? Because we are going to continue with our session after this 10 minutes break. But during this break of 10 minutes, you can have some cold drinks or hot drinks so that you can refresh yourself. And after this 10-minute break, we will basically continue with this downstream and integration. Those are also very, very important. Okay, so let us take a break over here, guys. And after the break, we will basically continue with our session. Yeah, thank you, guys. Let us take a 10 minutes break. Hello. Am I audible to all of you guys? Can you please confirm? Yeah, you can confirm me in the chat box, guys.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yeah. Thanks, Pooja, for the confirmation. Yeah. Okay. Uh, so let us continue with our session. Downstream. Now, what happens in downstream? Now, downstream, whenever I will say, all of you will basically say to me, Manoj, P2P. What is P2P? First, we will create a purchase requisition. From there, I will create a PO. Then from there, I will create a GIA, invoice, invoice reconciliation, payment. But then I will say, very good. What about this contract? You are having this contract in upstream database. Don't you want to create a PR, PO against this contract in downstream? Because your client will ask this thing, hey Manoj, I have signed a contract for $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, $100 million, $500 million. Now this contract I want to use for our PR and PO creation, plain and simple. How we will do it then? So that means we need to move the contract from upstream to downstream. How we will do it? So that is where contract compliance will come into the picture. So what is it? Okay, Manoj. So it's a bridge between upstream to downstream. Yes. What next? Through which the contract will move. The major thing which I ask is like majority of the participant, we will ask them that what is the meaning of contract compliance? What we do in contract compliance, or why the contract compliance is required over here? So what happens is like they will always say to me, contract compliance is basically part of downstream, or we don't need it. Actually, contract compliance is not part of upstream, not part of downstream. It's a bridge between upstream and downstream through which the contract will move. Okay, Manoj. That means what? That means whenever you're implementing Ariba for your client, upstream and downstream is being used over there. Contract compliance become a mandatory thing. Excuse me. Yeah, it becomes a mandatory thing. So once it becomes a mandatory thing, what happens is like, why it becomes a mandatory thing? Because the contract is there. The contract needs to be consumed. Where? In downstream. So we need contract compliance. So that means what? Supplier qualification also become mandatory. Why? Because contract are signed between buyers and suppliers. Now this supplier exists in your upstream. If this supplier does not exist in your downstream, what will happen? It will give an error in contract compliance. So that is why after supplier onboarding only we have shown you the contract compliance. Generally what happens, majority of the trainer will say, okay, after you do the contract management, you can do the contract compliance. They will not know, forget about giving you the information, they will not know ki, are we are having what? The prerequisite is that the supplier qualification must happen first. The prerequisite is once the supplier qualification happens over there, then only we can do the contract compliance, otherwise it will fail. And why it is happening? Because upstream database is different, downstream database is different. See, this was the thing which I was speaking at the beginning of the session. Application of knowledge, not knowledge itself, application of knowledge. Okay, so please keep this thing in your mind. Now, all of you will say, Manoj, the scenarios are getting a little bit complex. Actually, not complex. There are a lot of scenarios which we need to understand. Why? Because in downstream, you will say, "Ki boss, catalog items are present over there." So if I am creating this PR, I have to create it against a catalog items. Then I will say yes. Then all of you will say, "Arey Manoj, we are also having contract compliance." So what it will do? Contract compliance will do another thing. Now all of you will say, "Acha, will convert the non-catalog item into catalog item." Acha, contract compliance convert a non-catalog item into a catalog item? Yes. I did not knew it. Even in SAP Pressbook, if you go and you will see, you will not find this thing. Why? Because you will know it once you work in the project. Contract compliance will convert a non-catalog item into a catalog item, but its type will be different. So that means, Manoj, these catalog items which we are loading in downstream, so these are actually what? Non-contract catalog item. Non-contract catalog item? Yes. So that means next time in your interview or in your, forget about the interview, they will not go to so much depth. You go to a project and your client asks, how many types of catalog items are available? You will tell them ki non-contract catalog items are present, contract catalog item are present. Client will say, what is this? Then you will say non-contract catalog item. What we will do? We will basically load this data within the downstream as catalog subscription. Okay, very good. What about catalog subscription? Sorry, what about contract catalog item? So this will come with the help of contract compliance, and it will come automatically. We don't have to load it manually. Oh, it makes sense. See, in our session, you will see each and everything which is happening. Please don't think it is happening because of coincidence. We have designed this curriculum in such a way from a project experience. Excuse me. First, you will not understand anything. But the more we go into in depth, you will find out that each of these points which Manoj is telling is getting linked to each other. Just like a puzzle. At first, when you will try to solve the puzzle, it will not make sense. But then after some time, you will see everything is making sense. Same thing over here. So that is why I said to all of you guys that knowledge is not the most important thing. Anybody can have knowledge by reading a book or something like that. But application of knowledge. What does supplier qualification has to do with contract compliance? What does contract compliance has to do with downstream over there? These are part of upstream. If you don't know, then what will happen? The end result will always be having issues. So please keep this thing in your mind. Very important stuff. Now, here also I will do the PRPO IR payment. Now, the thing is like, all of you will say, Acha Manoj, what is this process? This process is called as procure to pay. Okay, what is this process? This process is called S2P, source to pay. Now, both the process gets implemented, Manoj? Yes, both the process gets implemented. But under what circumstances? Think about this thing. Under what circumstances, Manoj, this process will differ with each other? Now, the first and foremost thing which you need to understand and to decide on this thing is what? It's basically how you are deciding this factor. Okay. Now, the first and foremost thing which you need to decide on this factor is very simple. And what is that? What's the usability of the scenarios? Let's try to understand that usability of the scenario. Correct? Very important. Uh, First and foremost thing, if you go ahead with procure to pay, that means working with non-contract catalog item. Do you have any effective control over it? The answer is no. Why? Because your end user will find those non-contract catalog item where? In the catalog section of downstream, and they will keep on adding it in the PR and submitting it in the PR. Then what will happen? Whether you want to approve it or reject it, where you want to do it? By the approvers in PR approval process. But this time for creating a purchase requisition, submitting it, and at the last moment of approvers rejecting it, this will affect your efficiency. So big organization, what they say, Manoj, okay, let's go ahead with contract catalog item. That means we will sign a contract with the supplier. There we will negotiate with the suppliers, and then we will have a good price. So what I want is you to design a solution where our focus should be on S2P, source to pay. Why? Because it is negotiated. We are getting a better deal. So S2P will be our priority number one. Priority number two is P2P, procure to pay. Why? Because P2P process will not be optimally negotiated, but contract always will be signed after optimally requesting. So that is why if you go to any job search for SAP Ariba, you will see H2P. They will ask, do you have knowledge in H2P? Mandatory knowledge in H2P. Working knowledge in P2P. That means P2P is good to have, but H2P is mandatory. Why? And remember, in contract, what we will do? There is a limit. What is the limit? The limit is, let's say the contract is $100 million. So we can create n number of PRs. But after the $100 million has been used up, what will happen? You can't create PR against it. Similarly, when I will create a contract, I will say for every PR which is created against the contract, it should have at least 20,000 USD and at max 500,000 USD, not more than that. That means what? That I'm setting a limit. And at what level? Not at the approval level, at the catalog level only. So catalog level only, I am basically setting within the contract only. If I'm setting this limit will be applicable at the contract screen only. Sorry, catalog screen only. That means before you go to the PR screen, if you give 600,000 USD, immediately Ariba will say you can't do that. Maximum limit is 500,000 USD. So that means what? It is stopping the efficiency at the, it's basically resolving this issue at the source of the issue. So now our client will say, "Are Manoj, very good. My end user is careless. They will be always be careless only. But you are stopping them at a catalog screen only through the contract compliance. What is happening? No inefficiency is happening. Otherwise, what will happen? The end user will create a catalog, select the item, and then basically they will create a PR, and this will lead to issues. Okay, Manoj, this is a big issue. Okay, keep this thing in your mind. Now, very good. But all of you will say to me, "Are Manoj, you talked about all those things, but where is the configuration?" So in upstream, we'll majorly work with template. Sourcing, contracting, all those things are templates. So within the templates, what we can do? We can configure business rules and validation. Similarly, we can configure task. It can be of standard as well as custom. We can configure approval workflow, serial, parallel, or custom. Okay, so keep this thing in your mind. Very, very important. Okay, so please keep this thing in your mind. Now, very good. Uh, we will see this thing in template in upstream. What we will see in downstream? In downstream, we will basically see how catalog subscription are loaded. Now, please don't think catalog subscription, Manoj, it will be easy. Millions of catalog items will be there from 4,000, 5,000 suppliers. How will you basically deal with those catalog subscription? Majority of the Ariba functional consultants start complaining, "Are Manoj, so many catalog subscription is coming, 5,000 catalog subscription, 10,000 catalog subscription, 5 million, 10 million catalog items. How I will deal with it?" There will be issues. We know how to deal with it, how you can resolve those issues, and and how to make sure that when you're doing this activity, you are getting it right the first time only. That also we will see. Then we will basically see catalog config. Okay, millions of catalog items is there. Very good. So, do you think the end user will see all the data properly? All the data? Now, of course, you cannot show million of catalog item, all the catalog items to every user. So you want to control their uh, visibility to which users you will show which catalog items, that you can configure. Similarly, uh, there can be multiple. Just a moment, guys. Similarly, as you can see over here, that there are different uh, uh, catalogs items will be there. Okay, which catalog items will come at the top, which one will come at the middle, which one will come at the end, all those particular things we will basically discuss these things. Correct? So please keep this thing in your mind. Okay, so please keep this thing in your mind over here. Now, very good. Catalog subscription, catalog configurations, all those things we are basically discussing. Now, the next thing is approval workflow. Now, what do you mean by approval workflow? Manoj, what I mean over here is approval workflow in downstream is different from upstream. So, approval workflow in upstream will be done where? Within the template. But here, approval workflow will be done. Okay. So, now, here also you will say serial parallel. No, here will be static and dynamic. What is static? Static means, okay, level 1 will be approved by Manoj, level 2 will be approved by Nikita, level 3 will be approved by Pooja, like this. This is static. But majority of your requirement are dynamic in nature. All of you will say, Manoj, what do you mean by dynamic in nature? So what do I mean by dynamic is very, very simple. What's that? That is, your client comes and say, Manoj, in level 1 only, I'm not talking about approval level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. No, I'm talking about approval level 1. If the user is belonging from Delhi, Manoj will approve level 1. If the user is belonging from Maharashtra, then for level 1, approval will be done by Iraj. If the user is belonging from Hyderabad, then for approval level 1, Sana will approve. And if the user is belonging from Bhubaneswar, then the level 1 will approval will be done by Pooja. Now all of you are thinking these are 4 different approval levels. Actually wrong. These are only approval level 1. But within approval level 1, what I'm saying is depending on the user who is creating the PR belonging from different region, what will happen? Different approvers will come and approve. It cannot be a user will belong from Delhi and Bhubaneswar. or Delhi or Hyderabad, or Delhi and Mumbai at the same time. User can belong from only one region. So only level 1 approval will be done by one approver only, but that will differ. So this is called as dynamic approval workflow. How will you do it? Now, all of you will say, Manoj, only 4 combination is there. It's not a big deal. But then I will say, tomorrow, your clients come up to you and they will say, there are 400 configurations, 400 dynamic approval workflow levels. What you will do in that scenario? So that you have to understand, and that we will see. 400 levels of configuration means what? 400 levels you will configure in the approval workflow? It does not make sense. Yes. So how will you do it? That is an example of dynamic approval workflow. And excuse me, this kind of issues you will never find solution in any SAP Pressbook or configuration guidebook. We will see that thing, how to resolve it. Now comes the integration. Now, whenever I will basically say about integration, immediately people will jump up and say, configuration, Manoj, configuration. Then I will say, which configuration? CIG configuration. Okay. What else? Uh, Mapping, web services. Boss, we are functional consultant. We are not supposed to be basis consultant. Okay. Then what we should understand in integration? For example, have a look at the payment. What does payment means? Now, all of you will basically say to me that payment means paying to the supplier. Okay. ERP and Ariba, both the system will be there, integrated to each other, right? All of you will say yes. So my question is, where you will do the payment, in ERP or in Ariba? Where you will do it, ERP or in Ariba? Plain and simple. So the answer is, all of you will say Ariba only. In Ariba only we are doing the procurement. Then I will say, how you are deciding that? If you don't look at the client's requirement, how will you understand that? Or where you will understand that? So your client will basically say, I want to do my payment, and I will say, okay, very good, but where you will do the payment? Now payment means what? Paying to the supplier. But is your process stopping after paying to supplier? Now all of you guys are basically thinking, yes Manoj, paying to the supplier, is this the end of the process? The answer is no. Why not? Because after paying to the supplier, what will happen? After paying to the supplier, You have to keep one thing in your mind. And what is that? You have to update the account book. Which account book? FI account book, right? Because if you don't do the FI account book, what will happen? If you don't update the FI account book, there will be a lot of things which will come into the picture. And what is that picture? That is, at the end of the financial year, the FI account book cannot be closed. Why? Because profit and loss are not matching. Big issue for your client. So if you look at Ariba, what happens in Ariba is you can only do the payment to the supplier. After that, you can't do anything. But if you look at ERP, there you can say, okay, I can do the payment to the supplier, but I can also do one more thing. And what is that one more thing? We can also post the data in the FI account book. Why? Why in Ariba we can't do that? Why in ERP we can do that? Because ERP's functionality is present over there, because it's a part of FI module. Posting against the account book is part of finance module, not part of your procurement module. So since it is ERP, in ERP you are having but you are also having FI, so you can do that. Now if you are a consultant, you will say, okay, we can do it in ERP only, but are you doing it in The answer is no. You have to get hold of a finance consultant and you have to ask them, ki boss, you tell me what is the BT, business transaction event, for posting of this payment data, supply payment data in the account book. They will give you the details. It's not part of procurement. And you come to Ariba and if you ask them that boss, what will happen? Yes, payment to supplier can be done. Can we post this information in the account book? Ariba will say no. Why? Because it's a procurement solution. It's not a ERP solution. And that is what I said to all of you guys at the beginning of today's session, that you look at payment, look at Ariba. Ariba is not an ERP. It's a procurement focused software. So that means all of you will say, Manoj, payment will be done in ERP, and once it is successfully processed, the status update will happen in Ariba. Exactly. So this is nothing but the integration for us. So this is basically called as integration scenario building. For every transactional document, PR, PO, GR, invoice, IR, payment, all those things you have to decide. Similarly, you have to decide for sourcing contracting. This is for transactional data. What about master data? Company code, purchasing organization, purchasing group, all those things also you have to decide where it will be maintained and where it will be replicated. That is called as integration scenario building. And as a functional consultant, you have to decide that. Nobody else can take a decision on this spot. Okay, so this is integration scenario building. What else? Mass data loads. What does mass data loads means, Manoj? So mass data loads actually means over here is what you can say, loading of master data manually into Ariba. Huh? Manoj, you said there is master data integration. Automatically we can move the master data from ERP to Ariba. Then why we have to load this master data manually with the help of CSV files into Ariba? So for master data integration, the most important part is what? That master data must exist in ERP first and then in Ariba to move this data from ERP to Ariba. Let's talk about commodity code. Okay, so please keep this thing in your mind, which is very, very important. Now, first and foremost thing which we need to understand over here is commodity code. Commodity code exists in Ariba. Does it exist in ERP? All of you will say no. Some of you guys will say yes, material group. Then I will say material group is what? It's a custom version of material group in ERP is loaded. Okay, Manoj. So what happens in commodity code in Ariba? UNSPSC commodity codes are used. United Nations Specified Product and Services Commodity Code. It's a standardized set of commodity code. Okay, so please keep this thing in your mind. Standard set of commodity code, nothing else. Okay, very good. What else? So the standard and custom are not same. So that means even SPSC commodity code does not exist in ERP. So if it does not exist in ERP, how will you bring that data into Ariba? Okay, Manoj. So we have to do mass data load, right? Building the CSV file for the UNSPSC commodity code over here and uploading it into Ariba. Exactly. What else? The next thing is purchasing unit. If you look at the purchasing unit, what will happen? Purchasing unit is present in Ariba. It is not present in ERP. Since purchasing unit are not present in ERP, purchasing unit does not exist in ERP. Now all of you will say purchasing organization, purchasing group. Then I will say no, purchasing organization, purchasing group are existing in Ariba. That will come as a part of master data integration. I'm talking about purchasing unit. So what is purchasing unit? Purchasing unit is a master data which is used in Ariba. We will discuss about this thing in our mass data load session, but it does not exist in ERP. If it does not exist in ERP, how will you bring this data into Ariba? So for them, you have to do mass data load. Remember, this is a very important thing, and yes, you have to do it. Last, the CIG config. Now, in here, you have to understand that 25 to 30% of the configuration has to be done by the functional consultant. That we will also understand. But 75% of the configuration will be done by basis consultant. So, Manoj, what we will do? We will also understand the configuration over there. Why? Because let's say, for example, web services configuration. This will be done by whom? By the basis consultant. But they will say which web services, what is the shared secret, what are the authentication, what are each and everything which we need to understand over here. Because they will say, I don't know anything about Ariba. And since I don't know anything about Ariba, what will happen? This will fail considerably. So we have to find a solution for it. Exactly. So keep this thing in your mind. Okay. So all those things we are going to understand. So this is basically the demo which we wanted to show to all of you guys, and we just want to uh, make all of you guys understand this thing. So please don't think today is a demo session that does, it's of no value. No, what we always, as I said, like from the last 5 years, whenever we will take a demo session, we will tell to all of you guys that remember, demo session is a session where where your initiation begins. Once you come to the first session, what happens? That is where we will further build up the knowledge. Okay, so I hope that all of you guys understood that in Ariba, what happens is uh, the whole way of working is very, very different from SAP. Now, why? Because SAP Ariba cloud version was launched in 2010. That means it was developed in 2008, 2009. Very good. Developed by whom? Developed by Ariba as a non-SAP company. Acha. So when Ariba became an SAP company? In September 2012. That is why if you look at Ariba's technology, Ariba's architecture, Ariba's process design, everything is different from SAP. Why? Because it was designed by a non-SAP company. S4 HANA, SRM, they are basically designed by in-house SAP team. So they will be same, not with Ariba. So that is why Ariba was acquired by SAP in September 2012. Okay, so keep this thing in your mind. Now, guys, if you are having any queries or question, you can raise your hand. We will be taking your queries or question over here. So please don't try to raise your hand. Uh, what you can say uh, physically. I won't be able to see. In the Go to Training app only, you can basically raise your hand. Yeah, Amit, I think you can unmute yourself and you can go ahead and ask your query.
Yes, Manoj. Hi. Uh, Actually, there are a lot of questions now regarding catalog, non-catalog. But basic question: can we integrate Ariba to non-SAP systems? Because now we are talking about the integration between SAP and Ariba. But can we use without SAP or any other system?
Yeah, that you can do, but remember, with SAP product, you will have the interfaces, right? Interfaces means web services over there, which are used for integrating the data between both the system. So when you are integrating Ariba with the SAP product, by default, you will get those
I'm not able to hear you, Manoj.
for that. What happens
Okay.
is like the customization must happen. Customization must happen means what? Because the non-SAP ERP system will have a different data format, different message format. You will need help of a what? You will need the help of that Microsoft uh, Dynamics consultant, or the Oracle ERP consultant, so that they can also give you the mapping logic. And once the developer write that mapping logic, the integration will happen properly.
Okay. Thanks, Manoj, for the answer.
Yeah. Any other queries, Amit? You can go ahead and ask.
No, not now, Manoj.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Amit. Okay. If there's any other queries, guys, you can raise your hand, or we can basically conclude our session for the day. Okay, good. I think we are not having any other queries, so we can basically conclude our session for today, guys. Okay. Yeah. So once again, thanks Pooja for conducting the session, and thanks all of you guys for participating in our session. And we are good to conclude our session for today. Yeah, thank you. And those of you guys who are interested in our session, please get in touch with our sales consultant. They will help you in registering for the session. Yeah, thank you guys. Let's conclude our session for the day.